Hi there, welcome to my Lightroom editing session. I'm going to be editing some recent photos for use in a future blog post at TreenGeek.ca. So I thought I'd share my process with you as we go along here. So I have Adobe Lightroom open and I have a collection made called Current Work with all of the photos from that day that I have yet to edit. You can see here that I've already renamed the files. I typically will rename most files and give them a meaningful name, and I've also keyworded them, so that part is all done. Basically all I have to do now is edit them. So this is basically from a railfan trip that I took west of Winnipeg, and so I'm basically telling the story of where I was and what I was doing. So I'm not going to edit every photo here, but just follow along. I'll give some comments as I edit them, and maybe you'll learn something, get a few tips, and if you want to make any suggestions, then by all means, please leave a comment and let me know. I'm always open to learning more things. So I have a mix here of a couple of different cameras, 3 different cameras really. This one here is from my phone. You can scroll down here, you can see it's from my iPhone 8 Plus. This one here is a ground camera from my Canon EOS 77D, and this one here was taken from a DJI drone. So I have 3 different cameras that I was using, and in fact there's a 4th one, a Canon T1i that I was using for video, but there's not much I'm going to do to edit that. So looking at this one, I'm probably going to edit this one. So I go press the D and go to develop mode here and have a look. So a couple of things that I noticed right off the bat, the horizon is not level, so that needs to be fixed. Probably not a lot else needs to be fixed. I have a couple of presets. No presets were applied when I brought it in, so I can try the generic landscape preset, or I can try this backlit. To me, the backlit here introduces a lot of, well, I'll click it. Introduces some patterns in the sky, which are not good because this is a JPEG. So you can see there's some banding in the sky along here, which is terrible. Don't want that. So if I go to generic landscape, those kind of go away. They're still faint, but they're there. But better. So let's start with that. I like to use these presets as a starting point, and then I'll fiddle with the images after. So here, first thing is to fix the horizon. I press the letter R. I'm a big fan of keyboard shortcuts. So here, there's a couple of different ways to do it. You can simply grab it and eyeball it and go, maybe about there. That looks fairly level. Or you can hold down the control key and you can see the cursor changes to a cross, and then you basically drag a line and you say, okay, Lightroom, that should be a level. And let go, and you can see it basically did nothing. So it was pretty happy with where I was already. I eyeballed it pretty well. So as far as composition goes, it's pretty good. I don't like the fact that this pole is cropped off. So what I'll do is I find this foreground here is a little bit boring. So I'm going to crop it out just a little bit. And what that will do is allow me to then come over here just a little bit. And then it's not cutting off part of the pole. Now you can also look at the rule of thirds and say that the horizon should be at 1/3. It's pretty close, so that's pretty nice. Got a big open sky here, which is a little dull, but the colors make it kind of interesting, so we'll leave it. Other things, I always like to fiddle with the detail. So here my preset has a default sharpening of about 66 and edge masking at 71. So if you hold down the Alt key and click this, you can see what is being sharpened here. So pretty much everything that should be sharpened is being sharpened, but also the grass is being sharpened. So I'm going to slide it over a little more. You can see the grass kind of fades out, but the objects are still being sharpened. So I'll go all the way to 100, let go. So if I Control Z and Control Y just to compare, you really see no difference here. But probably if I zoomed in on the grass here, if I Control Z, grass is, you can see there's a subtle difference in the grass. It's not much. So the other things you might want is maybe I want to fill this shadows in a little bit here. So I can try with a graduated filter. Come in here, put the exposure up a little bit on the filter, and then click it in, bring it up just a bit. Try to get it parallel to the tracks. And I've got exposure up. What if I bring shadows up instead? Well, that looks very unrealistic. But maybe there. I'm trying to balance it so that it's not dark where the sky is light. Try to get this part here at the bottom to match the brightness level of the sky. So that's pretty good. The only other thing is you've got this thing here. These are markers that railways have to mark where buried cables are, and it kind of sticks out. So let's get rid of that with a healing. I press Q, spot removal, and make my spot a little bit bigger, and just drag over it and make sure I get all of it. Slop over the edges a little bit and see how that looks. Come on, chug, chug, chug. Well, so you've got basically two. It looks pretty good. And if you look closely, you'd see there's two identical ones, but really it's these two here. It's pretty subtle, so no one's really going to notice that. So I'm okay with that. And really, I'm happy with this. So we'll move on to another image. Moving on, got this image here. Oops, I clicked in too far. This image here, I decided to go for a silhouette here. It's pretty nice, but I don't want to edit anything here. That one, mileboard 37, no. I tried for a couple of different silhouette shots here. This is kind of blown out a bit. You can see these are DNGs. This is my drone. So this is a ground shot taken here. I kind of like this one. So if I go into develop mode for this one, it already has the preset, the generic landscape preset. I kind of like it. I can, since I'm here in sharpening, I'll play with sharpening now, do the same thing. There, about that, like that. That's pretty good. Noise reduction, I have probably not any noise. I'll leave that alone. Now here you might want to play with the shadows. Do I want to bring the shadows up or down? So if I bring the shadows up, that's pretty good. But what if I bring them down? Maybe this is maybe I really want that. I don't know. See, a lot of times editing is a decision you have to make early on or later on in the editing process. What do I want this photo to look like? Here, this looks very dark and moody. But if I undo it and go the other way, it's more warm, right? So I'm not sure which way I want to go with this. The only thing I can say here is when you go to bring the shadows down like that, the lights disappear, and that's not good. I want to know, I want to see this. So you can go two ways. I can either crank the shadows right up and see this. Probably there'll be some noise here that I'll have to deal with. Or if you want to be really advanced, you can say, well, I want to see that, but I want to see shadows down here, so I can do a what do you call it, graduated filter here and bring up the shadows only on this part. So I can either bring up exposure a little bit maybe, and then bring up shadows a little bit too. Not too much, just a little subtle. I like that. But then we still have this problem here. These guys are too dim. So what if I brought the shadows up here a lot? And there's not going to be a lot of shadows up here. If I say go like this, no, see, that's too much. Well, I don't know. Let's see. I kind of wanted that number to be lit too. So if I bring the shadows up there a lot, it kind of looks unrealistic here. But let's leave it for now. Click in and have a look. It's not bad. You can see there's some grain there. So I can deal with grain by bringing up the noise reduction a little bit. And that brings it better. And then let's deal with the whites and blacks. So I want the blacks to be black. So I'm going to hold down the Alt and then drag it down until I start seeing there. So I don't mind the stuff in the foreground being actually completely black. So I can get down to maybe about here. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to go Control Z, as you can see there. No, it's maybe too black. So how far did I go? I went down 38. Let's maybe bring the black clipping down to 20 or so. There. That's pretty good. Now the whites. You can really overdo the whites here. Like, you're supposed to be able to drag it up until you see this. But what you'll find is it sometimes gets too bright. So that's what it is at plus 36. If I undo that, see, it brings it up, and it's still pretty good. But it's not as, I find it's not as warm when you really crank the whites up. This is pretty bright. So I don't know. Let's leave it. Still not entirely happy with this. It seems like a little bit grainy to me. But you know, when I zoom in, it's not so bad. Maybe what I want is I want these lights to pop a little more. So maybe I'll just do a little saturation circle here. So I want it to saturate a lot, and I'll just put that on top there, like that, and saturate the heck out of it. And then I'll do the same for this one. Saturate the heck out of it. How do we feel about that? So if I take that down to here, and here, it really didn't do much, did it? Do not see much of a difference. A little bit. Horizons level, always want to check that. I'm pretty happy with that photo. The only other thing, maybe I could fiddle with saturation there. So if I go back here to the graduated filter, and I pick this one that I've already have, that was the one, remember, I did the shadows and exposure. What if I crank the saturation up on that? Let's go crazy with it. That's way too much. Down there, I think, is that too much, I wonder? Yeah, see, it didn't make a lot of difference. I like that. I'm pretty happy with that photo. So, back to grid mode with a G. Then here I am flying my drone near, basically eye level, higher. Yeah, I'm not really excited about that photo. And here I got closer to the pole here because I wanted to get a close look at the pole. And that is as close as I got. So let's go into develop mode here, and we'll crop out a bit of this and fiddle with this. Because you don't often look at these poles because they're they're high up in the air. So let's get a closer look. Crop in, crop in, crop in like this, and I want to keep the other poles in sight. So crop in like that, right about like that, I think, and maybe no, the other way. I'm using the cursor keys here. Let's see. That's pretty good, and you can see we're pretty close. Pretty tight in here. It almost seems overexposed here, so let's take some of the highlights down. Yeah, I like that better. I like using dehaze a lot, and so it's like a contrast on steroids. So if I crank the dehaze here, see, I get it really makes the colors pop, and I like the effect of it. I still think this is a little too bright. So, well, I could use an adjustment brush, I guess. And here I want to get exposure down a little bit. Make sure auto mask is on. And then I just go start painting. You can see there I'm taking the exposure down. I like that better. Okay. And as always, check the detail. It's probably fine. Yeah, detail masking, crank it up a little bit so I don't, whoops, so I don't sharpen the grass. Up there. Looks good. It's saturated enough. I don't need to fiddle with saturation. I like that photo. Great. Moving on. Here's a couple of drone photos of view of the whole area. This is where I was. Look, there's me right here. It's hard to see here, so I'm going to go into develop mode, and I'm going to use my generic backlit. You can see the difference here. There's the landscape, and there's the backlit. So the backlit really cranks up the shadows and takes down the highlights. So the sky is not so bright, and this is brighter. I can use a graduated filter and crank the exposure just a little bit more to lighten that up a bit, like that. Somewhere here, maybe. That way it's not so dark, because I'm trying to balance the sky and the foreground, so that the foreground's not too dark. And I could probably crop in a little bit. This is a little too distant. Crop in, crop in. I'm trying to get kind of rule of thirds here, one line being the point of interest and one line being the horizon, more or less. And if I was really going to do that, I'd probably put point of interest at each of the intersections. So what if I go here? The next image I'm going to look at is an image of the train passing the grain elevator in Oakville. Now, I took a number of them with a long lens, so first thing I have to do is figure out which one I want to look at. So Lightroom has this great ability where you can choose an image, and I honestly don't know where to find it from the menu, but what I can do is press C, and what it did is it will compare images, and you can kind of see which one you want to do. So I'm going to go back with G. So you see I selected all the images that I wanted to compare to see which one I like, and then I press C. So the one on the left is the selected one, and the one on the right is candidate. And then you have a choice here. I can swap them. So I can say, oh, I like this one better than this one, so let's swap it. Great. And then I say this one here, maybe, or make selected, I guess. It's the same thing. I don't know why swap would be different, but that's, anyways. So like I like this one, but I like this one better, so we'll make him the candidate, and then we'll move on to the next one. Now I can also, click and zoom in and compare them, and I say, well, they both look pretty good, but I like this one better, I think. So I'm going to make him the candidate, and then I've got the next one here. They both look equally sharp. Maybe this one's a little better, so let's pick him. And then I've got this one here versus this one. This one's sharper, I think, but he's a little close more in front of the elevator. So I think I like this one. This is the candidate. So then I go back to, I click done, and it gives me the selected one. This one here was the one I selected as a candidate. So let's edit that. First thing I want to do is crop it. Press R and resize it. I want to crop out all this junk in the foreground, that thing especially. And crop down to here. Too much sky. I want to make sure I keep that antenna there, so I'm just going to slide down a little bit. And that's pretty good. Maybe I can go all the way to there. Also make sure that I have the horizon right, so I'm going to line up on the green elevator like that. Make sure the green elevator is vertical. Hit enter. There we go. Next thing is to look for distracting elements, and this is the distracting element right here. So I'll click in on that. Press the Q for the spot heal. I'm going to make the brush a little smaller and get rid of him because I don't want that stick in the image. So let's see how it looks. Get rid of this stick too. Press the Q again to dismiss it. That's pretty good. What's this here? Some debris or something. Get rid of it. Good. Anything else on the edges? No. What's this? That's not too distracting, and I think if I tried to get rid of that, it would be pretty obvious that I did that, so that's fine. Now let's look at sharpness. That is pretty sharp. I'm holding down the Alt for the masking, and we're going to only mask in what we need to mask in. I think this would really benefit from a dehaze. You can see it is a little hazy, so let's crank up the dehaze. Part of it is, you know, when you're shooting at a long lens at a distance, you can get some heat haze in the sky, and that dehaze will help some. The problem with dehaze is it makes things darker, so usually you have to bump up the exposure afterwards. Not too much. Now, I like the brightness of here. The elevator's a little bright, so let's take the highlight down. It's really not doing much for the elevator, but it is mostly the sky. Certainly I could saturate a little bit. Now, I could saturate the whole thing, but I think this is saturated enough. So maybe I want to try selective colors. So what if I saturate some blues? Get some more in the sky. So that's way too much, obviously. That's very unrealistic. A little more saturation in the sky. And I'd like to saturate these guys. So they look kind of orange. So, wow, that really makes them pop, doesn't it? Now, here's where you get into what's realistic and what's okay versus what's, you know, unrealistic image manipulation. I don't know. I'm okay with this. That's not realistic. So let's go with that. It's subtle, and that kind of makes it pop a little bit. The only thing I would have to say about this is that I'm not really happy with the crop. I kind of feel like it's lopsided, like this. There's too much empty space on the right here. Now I could go this way, but I have that stupid box. So let's try. If I go here, see, I like this better in terms of composition, but then I have this stupid box, which is really distracting. So let's try to spot heal it and see what happens. I'm gonna zoom in on it. Lightroom spot healing is good, but it might, something that large might be too much, and it might be really obvious that there was a hole, or that it was edited out. So let's see what happens, because I really like to get rid of it. Now, I know you could probably do it in Photoshop, but my Photoshop skills are not mad, so they're not great. And look at that. See, that's not great. But I can try here, maybe. No, it's better up there. Okay, because it's got that pole, got that tree trunk in the way. So maybe that's not bad. No. I have to wait. I have to be patient and wait for this thing to update. So what if I go over here, maybe? All right. Let's see what it looks like when I zoom out. There's a little bit of white here. Sometimes you'll see that in the Lightroom spot heal too. You'll see a little bit of white. So I can do it again. So I'm gonna spot heal this part right here. And it's probably gonna pick something ridiculous. Yeah. You can hit slash and it will move on to the next suggestion. Yeah, that's dumb too. But if I can grab it and say move it over to here. Yeah, see, that's even worse. So let's undo all that, go back to here. So I can always crop that little bit out that I don't like. Come in a bit like that. How's that look? I'm pretty happy with that. Now, for some reason, this seems lopsided now. Let's see. I don't think it is, but it seems that way. Yeah, because if you look at the roof here, that seems quite level. So we'll stick with that. So I think I'm pretty much done here. Oh, I just feel like this is maybe a little too close to the top. So what if I just add a little more breathing room in the top of the elevator? What if I add a lot? Let's see what that looks like. I kind of like that. I think that's a pretty nice image. And I don't mind chopping this pole right in half like this because it is vertical. So we're cutting it. If this pole was at a slant or something, it would make it obvious that the picture wasn't level. But since the picture is level, it's cutting it okay. The only other thing is I don't like this little bit of snow on the edge. And so let's spot heal that sucker out and see if we can get rid of it without causing too much damage. I don't think that's going to work out well. No, I think we're just going to live with it. So, to my mind, it kind of distracts there. So maybe, what if I go this way? There versus there. There versus there. I think I still like that better. I like having the whole tree there. All right, we'll call that done. Next image is here. This is coming around the bend at Natris. So we've got a train coming here, coming here, coming here. These are all good, but I like this, either this one or this one, because it shows them coming around the bend. I like this one, and I definitely want to keep some of that color, but I want to crop in some. So back to press the R, and I also think, here's the problem with what is vertical here, because you can see the containers are vertical, but the locomotive is not. It's kind of leaning out a bit. So I could make the locomotive vertical, but then the containers are leaning in. But that's what they would be doing because they're leaning into the curve. So that should be right. Let's just go a little bit more with the locomotive there. And I'm going to crop in. I don't like this here in the corner anyway, so we'll just bring the whole thing in here like this. Crop in for a little more drama. Crop in here just a bit. I don't want to cut off. I want to make sure there's a little bit of space between the container and the edge of the frame. And we get the locomotive right here on the rule of thirds. So that's cool. And I could probably go down a little bit there. Just want to make sure we don't cut off the top of the branches. That's pretty nice. Now this looks too bright to me, so I'm going to bring the exposure down a little bit. There, see, that's better. That's down. That looks nice. Bring up the shadows a bit. There. Could probably bump up the saturation a little bit. We just don't want to oversaturate the red nose. So there's a lot of saturation. And what if I do Vibrance instead? I don't often use Vibrance, but let's try Vibrance. So if I do Vibrance, that's a 69, that's a lot of Vibrance. If I do Vibrance, I still get a red nose. But if I undo that, oops, too far, too many undos. If I undo that, or I bring this, see this is a good amount of saturation here, but the nose is too bright. So what if I do that and then bring the color of red down. Desaturate the red only. So the red, you want the nose to pop a little bit, but not dominate. So that's pretty good. So I want to do something with the sky. I would like it to be a little darker or a little brighter, but I've got to be careful not to oversaturate the rest of this. So maybe we try a radial filter. So I don't want the exposure up, I want the saturation up. I might end up bringing the exposure down. So if I take this, I drag that, you see it's really not doing much for the saturation of the sky. So let's fiddle with this, get it the right size, and then we'll start monkeying around with the actual settings. Stretch it out a bit, so basically about there. Could probably go a little bit higher there. Like that, that covers most of the sky except for that corner. So we got to get that corner. That covers all the sky. Right there. There. Okay. So now what can we do? We can, if we really crank the saturation, get a little more blue in the sky, which is nice. And if we take the exposure down a little bit, not too much. It has to be subtle. That's not bad. Clarity dehazing, that's not going to work. Contrast, it's really not going to do a whole lot either. So I think exposure and saturation are really the only ones we're going to fiddle with here. So if I saturate just a little more, it gives it a little more character. If I go back to here, you can see there's the sky before, and here's the sky after. So it gives a little more character, not too bad. The only other thing is make sure there's sharpness, so I'm going to zoom in on the locomotive here. It's a little fuzzy actually, a little blurry, but it's not bad. So if I bring the sharpness down there, crank it up a little more, not too bad. I like it. It seems a little oversaturated to me, but I think once I export it, it won't look so bad. I think this is pretty good. All right, so that's probably enough editing for now. You can see I have a few more images to go, but I'll work on them later. So thanks for watching, and please leave a comment below if you have any questions or comments, advice, and like and subscribe, and visit my website at traingeek.ca. Thanks for watching.